So this is Fred Mitchell, chairman of the Progressive Liberal Party, and I received some intelligence overnight about the meeting, which the so-called educational meeting that was supposed to have taken place in Freeport last night for licensees of the Grand Bahama Port Authority. Now, when the two activists or the progenitors of this meeting spoke and they had their press conference, they said that this was not a matter which was driven by the Grand Bahama Port Authority. So last night, I'm advised about 60 people showed up to the meeting. They said there are 3,000 licensees in Grand Bahama, the Freeport Grand Bahama, that is. So by my mathematics, that makes 2% of the licensees showed up, 2% of the 3,000 showed up. And it seems to me that it was based on a false premise, because this was not supposed to be Port Authority driven, but my advice is 2 agents of the Grand Bahama Port Authority spoke at the meeting. So fine, I want to make that clear. But the whole thing is based on a false premise. The fact is, as far as I'm aware, there's no privity between the licensees and the Bahamas government. So if the licensees have any issue, the issue is with the Grand Bahama Port Authority and whether the Grand Bahama Port Authority is performing under the provisions of the Hawksbill Creek Agreement, at least to the benefit of the licensees. Now, where there is privity is between the Bahamas government and the Grand Bahama Port Authority. And the only question which our Prime Minister has asked is whether or not the Grand Bahama Port Authority and its related companies are in a position to carry out the provisions of the Hawksbill Creek Agreement, which they agreed to do in 1955 and subsequently in 2 or 3 other agreements. Now, those of you who want to understand this perfectly, you need to read a letter which is published in the press this week from Terry Gabe. Terry Gabe does not support our party, but he is a Bahamian patriot, and he wrote a straight-out letter and reminded us that in 2016, the Grand Bahama Port Authority agreed that they would divest their shares, the shareholders, that is, the 2 families that control the port, that they would divest their shares, they would find a new investor, and they would then step out of their role in the Grand Bahama Port Authority. That is what they agreed to. So again, the people who held this meeting should have no quarrel with that, because that's what the shareholders agreed to with the Bahamas government. The Bahamas government is saying, you've not lived up to that. And all we're saying is you need to live up to that promise. The progenitors of the meeting, the 2 activists again, said that they had all these talking points that the Grand Bahama Port Authority also has. One of which is they had no obligation, for example, to maintain and build an airport. Well, first of all, we don't agree with that. But even if that is so, their general role is to be able to attract investment to Freeport, Grand Bahama. And what do you think other investors would say when the hurricane took place and the airport was wrecked? They decided, and their partners, to take the insurance money and not rebuild the airport. That sends a signal that they did not have confidence in their own product. So that is a dereliction, in our view, of the responsibility of the Grand Bahama Port Authority to the people of Grand Bahama. And then there is the report that they sold land to an investor in Grand Bahama. That was done last year. And the families, or the shareholders, were able to realize from that transaction something like $16 million collectively, give or take a few. And the question is, did they declare that in dividends, or did they put that back in the city? If they put it back in the city, then that would be their responsibility to show that they have confidence in the city. But our advice is it was taken out in dividends. So that's the background and context to all of this. I say again, the Bahamas government does not propose to abrogate in any way the Hawksbill Creek Agreement. All we said is the shareholders have an agreement with the government to act in a particular way, that is to divest themselves of the shareholding and find a new investor that can pass the due diligence test. There's no argument with the licensees, and people should not be dragged again into the internecine difficulties of the families who run the Grand Bahama Port Authority. I just want to make that clear, and thank you.